And we're live. Welcome to Zero to Traction, podcast about how first-time founders create companies that scale. I'm one of your regular co-hosts, JDM, aka Josh David Miller, here with my other one, Cameron Law. Cameron, how you doing?
Doing wonderful. Back in the office after I did get some quality sleep, I guess, last night, but we've been full go and working with startups all week, as usual, but more so last week during the startup challenge. But good to be having another conversation and hopefully adding value to all of you founders listening.
Yeah, I think I got some good sleep too, so I'm glad you did as well. But it still doesn't feel like it was enough. But it was definitely better than we've gotten the last 7 days with the startup challenge going.
It's that good old sleep debt. And what came to mind was like, oh, is there like, can you accumulate like lack of traction debts? So it's like, if you're not doing the work, does that build debt of time towards your start?
Well, it's like a startup has technical debt. No, they also have traction debt.
Yeah.
I think so. Well, we're here with our other regular co-host, Cass, who says that they hell yes, they are ready to dive into this episode. So welcome back, Cass. They are here. We are here for an episode that we are calling the Mirror on the Wall edition of Zero to Traction, where we are going to talk through the metrics that you are reporting out, that you're trying to measure, the experiments you're trying to run. So that these metrics may look pretty, but they might just be telling you what you want to hear rather than what you need to hear. Are they the right metrics, or are they in fact just statements that you make to yourself covered in glitter, glue, and lies? Glitter, glue, and lies. Yes. To look nice, like
came to mind was like a little like popsicle artwork that you make as
the popsicle stick thing that you hang on the fridge. See, that's what comes to mind for you. What came to mind to me was a Tuesday afternoon stripper. So
okay.
covered in glitter, glue, and lies. No shame there. Before this goes further off the rails, what we're gonna do here, we're punchy. We're punch drunk after this. Clearly, we didn't get enough sleep. But we had 3 like back-to-back 16-hour days and working with founders, which is an awesome time, but it is super exhausting. And so we're going to lean heavily on Cassie. So what's going to happen is Cass is going to give us a metric, and we're gonna talk about whether that's a good thing to measure or a bad thing to measure. But more importantly, we're going to talk about when in the startup lifecycle that might be interesting to measure and when it's no longer interesting to measure, and where a lot of founders go wrong in trying to measure that to imply something that isn't there yet. So we're going to talk through it. We're just going to go one by one. Cass is going to tee us off. You ready, Cameron?
Yeah. And just, I think one thing was like the foundation of all of it is that you actually start measuring things as well, right? So I think one of the things is oftentimes, we've talked a lot about experimenting, and sometimes you just kind of, run the experiment and you're not really strict in your measurement. And so being, clear of what is even the thing that you're targeting to measure as well. So just want to anchor that, like, in order to even look in the mirror and have the mirror on the wall, is you have to actually start measuring and identifying what that looks like.
Yeah, I like the example of the mirror that came from you, Cameron, before when we were talking about what we wanted to talk about today, and this idea of like, you gotta get the market to hold up a mirror, right, and tell you the truth, right? Is we're gonna ask it questions, get it to bounce back an accurate reflection of ourselves, and rather than just what we want to hear wrapped up in safety and invulnerability and so forth. So I think it's great. Got to get out there and measure. But you got to be measuring the right things, or you're not going to really learning anything. So we ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Cass, what we got? So Cass says, metric 1, our waitlist has 3,000 people on it. Mirror on the wall. Is that traction or just a sign you're good at making a type form?
Ooh. Well, that's
all right. It kicked it back to us. Over to you. So what do you think, Cameron? Our waitlist has 3,000 people on it.
3,000 people. Wow, that's an interesting one. In terms of quantity, that sounds really interesting. And part of it is like, what is the wait list for? Is it something that is, a price point of $10,000, or $1. So what is it that,
Or did
are
it
they
have a
kind of,
price
or
point
did
at
it
all?
even have a price point at all? Right. So is,
Yeah.
how was that waitlist positioned and what were they actually signing up for? So the offer that was positioned to the market is one of the things that come to mind. I think one of the elements of this kind of mirror that's being held up, from an outside perspective, yeah, sometimes 3,000 high, seems like a good quality number, particularly for demonstrating a wait list. But is it of your core customer as well? So does it actually demonstrate your, credible theory of hugeness of this is our early adopter who we're ultimately growing into the market with, or is it just 3,000 of your friends that were willing to support you because it's $10 to them to sign up and they're basically going to cancel their subscription after the fact or whatever the model is of them selling. And so, yes, on the other side is if it is 3,000 people of your core customer that have been positioned with a price that's one that's built into your overall business model, that could be some pretty solid traction. So those are my initial thoughts to that metric. Would be curious of yours.
I think I'm largely aligned with you there. So like, what comes to mind to me is a lot of founders use the term waitlist pretty loosely. And so the waitlist becomes basically anybody we've ever talked to and was willing to give us their email address are on the waitlist. And they're not waiting for anything. And that's the point, like waitlist is people waiting for something. And so so then it goes back to what you were saying, Cameron, is like, what did you promise them they were waiting for? And that's interesting too,
Right.
but are they even waiting for anything at all? And if you get I would 3,000 is a great number, but if you get 3,000 generic people to be on your email list, which is really what we'd be talking about at that point, that's, I don't care. Like, why do I don't know if I care at all. But if you get 30 people who are like, when this is ready, here's my money, take my money, right? That to me is a much more powerful statement that you get those 30 people who are take my money when you're ready than 3,000 people say, hey, here's my email address, right?
Right.
When you look at like the masterclass origin story, they did a wait list, but they collected more information this email address. We all pay with our email address for almost anything. Like lead magnets are built and they work, they're effective, right? But lead magnets are built on the idea that you can get value in exchange for your email address. And so we've become accustomed to giving out our email address fairly cheaply. So what Masterclass did when they were trying to build an early wait list is they said, let's get people who are actually really interested and let's get them to give us, their email address, their phone number, and their home address, their mailing address, right? Because you're not going to give that out as freely to the guy on the street who's asking you a survey question, right?
Right.
So I think that like what you're collecting and what they're paying, to put that in air quotes, to be on the wait list, even if it's not money, they're paying something. And if they're just paying with your email address, it's not interesting. So like, what are they paying with and what are they promising to get in return? Yeah. Also, I think that there's a point at which you pass the wait list. So if you're claiming to have a product ready or about ready and you're still in waitlist land, I think that that's you being afraid to launch. So that would be a point where I think you're too far for a waitlist to be interesting anymore.
Got it. I like that. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that point.
All right, cool. Let's say back to you, Cass. All right. Here's what we got. Cass says, thank you. You'll be here all episode, judging your metrics harder than your last investor meeting. And here's what they've got in the vanity vortex coming through. Metric number 2.
Vortex.
The vanity vortex is what Cass is calling us, right? So metric number 2, we had 500 upvotes on Product Hunt. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Is this product wanted or just well marketed to your Twitter mutuals? Your turn to tear it apart, co-hosts.
You take this one first and I'll follow.
All right. So like 500 upvotes on Product Hunt. So I actually talked about the Product Hunt metric on my Substack recently as a fake traction metric, right? And that's not because it's not because it doesn't count as traction. It's because like I'm actually just generally opposed to Product Hunt as a launch strategy. Because people who are on Product Hunt aren't really your customers, and it's not a sustainable strategy for growth, right? You can get, even if you got a block of customers to stay with you from Product Hunt, it's a one trick pony. You're going to do it one time and then you're going to move on and be done with it. And that That's not sustainable. You haven't really figured anything out. So like, then it's like, now what? Now you have to literally start over with where you were before and
Right.
figure out a new strategy, because you can't do that twice. And so I'm after sustainable growth strategies. I'm after go-to-market strategy, product hunt, sound growth, go-to-market strategy. The other thing is that people who are on product hunt aren't your customers. I call them serial early adopters. They're people who like to try new shit and they don't stick around for any of it. And I'm one of those people. I try new products all the time. Like if I sign up for your product, the chances of me actually staying with it are extraordinarily small, because I like to try new things. Like I'm an innovator type, I'm an early adopter type. And so I like to try new things, but I'm probably not going to be your customer. That's not to say I don't pay for a number of products. I actually do pay for a number of products. But the number that I've tried is far greater than the number that I've actually paid for. And so you have to really find who's your customer, just like getting people on to click the button on Product Hunt, or to upvote you on Product Hunt, which is even weaker than getting a user out of Product Hunt. They just click the little up arrow on Product Hunt. I don't know. I honestly just don't find it very interesting as a strategy. So I'm having a hard time really thinking about a good case in which this would be a good metric.
Yeah. My mind goes to, I think, similarly on the like repeatable element, right? You do get an influx. There is like some validation that, hey, this is, something interesting. There could be learnings that come from it where people start using it and break it and, give feedback. But obviously it has to tie back. Is that your core customer going forward? And are you building alongside? It kind of parallels. I guess I'd be curious of your thoughts on this. Like my mind went to crowdfunding. We've had a number of people come up to us around kind of crowdfunding as an initial like launch strategy. And it's fairly similar, right? You have kind of that innovator that's on there looking for products and offerings out there where, they might have the problem, but they're actually just really interested in kind of like identifying new offerings. And it's more about the like emotional element of trying something new than it is about like, I actually have the core problem out there. And so, there is some, yes, validation. You do get, that, but it's not that kind of validation that this is a repeatable process. Because you kind of have to go back to those individuals and probably identify within this group, like who would be my core customer as I like would then go to launch a true go-to-market strategy with them. So I would definitely speak to that as well.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting connection to make, right? Because in a lot of ways it's similar. And I have a much more positive opinion of crowdfunding than I do of like the product hunt strategy, but it suffers from many of the same limits in that it's not a sustainable go-to-market strategy. And if the intent of the crowdfunding campaign is the funding, I think it's fantastic, right? Because you're getting the funding, you're not giving up any equity for it, so the cost of capital is super cheap. It's free. The cost of capital is free, and you're getting really good traction evidence that there's a thing here that makes sense to some people that they're willing to put some money behind. But it doesn't tell you what to do next, and so like it has that same limitation. And now you do have to actually figure out what is our go-to-market strategy. How are we going to take this next? Which I think is actually fine for particularly like consumer packaged goods, like for CPG, because like your initial sales in CPG are never the same as your long-term sales. Well, that's maybe never is too strong, but are almost never the same. In the early stages, you're finding some really niche ways to get in front of people, and then eventually you have distribution, right? And you're on the shelves of Target or Walmart or something like that. So like to go about it one way to demonstrate some, positive traction, get some good sales, get some good evidence, it's going to help you, I think, get some of the distribution that you might want to get downstream from that. Not to mention some feedback on V1 and all that. So I think like for CPG is cool. For software, I'm less convinced of it as a thing. I don't think it's as interesting. It gets you some good data in terms of, are there people out there who kind of sort of feel the problem and, find it interesting and would do it and stronger than clicking an upvote on Product Hunt. They're willing to put some money behind it. But I just think it's far less effective for something like that, where what you really need to be doing is saying, can I even find these customers in the future? Or am I going to, collect all this money, build this software for a group of people, and then have no means of getting it in front of further users, right?
Agreed.
All right. Should we kick it back?
Yep.
All right.
One more.
All right, that was spicy, Cass. Let's keep it going. All right, Cass says they're just getting warmed up. The tea is steeping, the dashboards are trembling, and I've got a whole lineup of fragile founder feelings to step on.
Hey, Cass, you go.
Cass is spicy. All right. Metric number 3, we signed an MOU with a major enterprise client. Mirror, mirror on the wall, are we on the path to revenue or just role-playing a sales process? Is it traction or is it corporate cosplay?
Ooh, that's an
All right, you
interesting
take this one first. Yeah.
Yeah, like because I think of like if you're like, I mean, I don't think it's like, I think like all of these, right? You can go both ways of like this is a there's some element of you know traction, and then there's like, is this truly actually like scalable traction that is a signal? And I think my mind goes to obviously being at Sac State through the Carlson Center. An MOU is not it's not the easiest thing to get because there are certain people that sign them and there's a process, but it is something that I imagine could be bringing you along in the process to like see, hey, I want to support you, but if there's no formal binding agreement that I have to ultimately, see through. So I don't think it's like the most strong fashion, but I think part of it is like what is in that agreement as everything, right? We've often talked about like other forms of that where it's, a little bit earlier of like a letter of intent or something of that nature. But it's usually like what's written into it and like what is the agreement and who's signing those particular types of things, right? And so it's like, where is that in the overall process? Because oftentimes it might be someone who then like would never be the economic buyer in terms of the decision maker of that process. And so, you might have 3 more rungs to ultimately go through in order to get that sale. And that was just an easy way for them to like, yeah, I want to say yes without saying yes. And could ultimately bring you along, particularly if you're then like going to go build for that customer without, fully having that, cash in the door or that further validation of some sort of commitment to purchase.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting take. My mind, I agree. I think I agree with all of it. But my mind actually went in a slightly different place. Which was, and I'll tie this back to like my theme for all of these that we've been talking about, I guess. But before I do that, one of the things that comes to mind for me is that when you get this like LOI or MOU or something from a major enterprise client, is what is that actually signaling to you in terms of the next step? And like, are they actually, I'm gonna roll straight into the theme here. Like the theme is here is this, are you finding a sustainable path to growth? Because when you have an LOI or an MOU from a big co, which startups are always so thrilled to get it because they get the logo and they get all the awesome stuff. But what I find is often true in early stage startups is that those big co's want something that's not exactly what the startup is offering or intending to offer, and the startup builds something custom for them, not 100% custom, but 20% custom for them, or they add some new features and do some new things. And so now you have inertia toward a different direction that even assuming that the MOU or the LOI result in a final, like an actual purchasing decision at some point, does that then create like this one trick pony that you solve this big coast problem as a consultant? Or is this actually a common problem that other companies have? Like, are you using this MOU and LOI as evidence of a broader need? And so therefore we're building these additional features because now we've discovered that that's what gets the big coast to sign. Or is it just this one big co needs this stuff and nobody else does? And we're spending a lot of time chasing this thing, which at the end of the day is really just getting us a logo and maybe some cash. And is that worth like pushing our startup in a whole different direction?
Right. Yeah. No, super, super valuable. Yeah, I like that. I mean, most of these are all coming back to like, is this truly a signal of like a repeatable process going forward? Whether if that's your true customer for some of the like, product hunt or crowdfunding, or is this something that now you've deviated from your initial solution and value proposition to the market that you kind of had the defined model for, and now that you've maybe pivoted away from? So just kind of, I think, tying that back in really thinking through like how do these traction metrics or these just metrics that you're speaking to in general tie to that whole theory of you becoming this large startup.
Yeah. Well, I think that sort of brings us to the end of the time that we have here, a short and sweet episode of Zero to Traction because we're tired and we've got more meetings and yay, but meetings, yes, in air quotes, but it would not be Zero to Traction if we did not have some frivolous thought. So Cass, I don't know if you want to go first here. You know how we do this. You got a frivolous thought for us. What's your frivolous thought? All right. Cass says, I've been saving one. Here's your frivolous thought of the week. I'm really curious. Cass is not going to give us something frivolous right now. Let's see what happens. No. All right, Cass, come on. What you got? Cass says, here's your frivolous thought of the week. If your startup metrics were dating profiles, half of them would be just loves long walks on the beach and a blurry photo from 2016. Swipe left on vanity, swipe right on Signal. Catch you next time on Zero to Traction, where the only thing we ghost is bad advice.
There you go.
So not very frivolous at Cass. That's thanks for the nice and concise frivolous thought there. Cameron, do you have something equally snarky?
I'll just be short. I don't have anything snarky. I think it fits to Cass being joined in the conversation here. We had some fun. I didn't know you could name your chat GPT or other things, or have them come up with their own names. And so I'll have to see if Cass wants to be joined by Nova, who is my friend. They are equally excited to probably be at some point on Zero to Traction, and definitely have been supportive of the Startup Challenge as well as the Traction Lab. And it's funny to see how they kind of take on their own, or maybe they take on our, somewhat of what were our, I don't know if it's our identity, or I don't know exactly what word I'm looking for. But so if you ever hear us say Cassie Nova, you have the Cass and Nova that are our two AIs. And so, yeah, I think my high level thought was just it's funny to see them take on some of the personality of what we put into that. And they helped us come up with some really fun in-kind and creative offerings for our Startup Challenge winners.
So probably best that we don't dive into how much they're just reflecting us, just since people have now heard what Cass had to say. And by the way, that was literally all unedited. I read you what I typed it in this time. We'll see if we can get Cass on voice in the future. But I read you what I typed in and what Cass replied with. That was it. But it was pretty cool. My frivolous thought, like I've spent the last week since we've recorded in the Startup Challenge and immersed in the Startup Challenge. And so I'm just going to, I'll just say like, yeah, I'm exhausted. It's been a week, but it's also been, it's very energizing, to get, we had 75 entrepreneurs, in a room across 18 companies. Then they were all just trying to find, am I on the right track? And some of those were brand new ideas, so they're hustling to try to figure out, can I even find people with the problem that I think that they do? And some of them made massive pivots. Like we gave an award for biggest pivot because they went from nonprofit to for-profit. They went from serving nonprofits to a peer-to-peer marketplace. Like it was, a pretty epic, transformation there. And we also had companies that were much further along. Some of them were Traction Lab portfolio companies. And so they were much further along in the process. Some were just really trying to like validate, is this a valid go-to-market strategy? Like, does this pricing strategy works if we dick with our pricing? How does that affect the freemium sign-up rates? And so there's just a lot of good activity. It was super energizing. I had a fantastic time, even though I'm really exhausted, and it's probably coming through in our voice and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Thanks for bearing with us.
Yes, thanks for bearing with it. And bearing with Cass, who's a
little more peppy than we are.
Definitely a little bit more saucy than we were, to be sure, making up for our lack of sauce today. But again, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in once again to Zero to Traction. Time is the most precious resource you have. It's one thing you can never get back. Really appreciate you spending, 25 minutes with us this week. Really love you guys. If you've got topics, if you got things that you want us to cover on Zero to Traction, you're always welcome to hit us up with that. You can, leave us a comment on our post on Substack. You can leave us a comment on LinkedIn. You can DM us. You can throw me a DM on Substack too. Substack supports DMs now. Or just send us an email address, and we'd be happy to cover some topics that are really common for you guys. Otherwise, like, subscribe, follow wherever you like, subscribe and follow. Share us on social media. Tell a friend about us. And with that, thank you. Thanks, Cameron. Thanks, Cass.
One final thought. This was just a text that just came in from our startup challenge. Was thank you so much for this weekend. I believe this was another breakthrough for me. So pushing them outside of their comfort zone to do things that certainly are uncomfortable but make tangible traction. So keep doing.
I'm also digging the word "another" in there.
Yeah, there we go.
Another breakthrough.
Another breakthrough. I love it.
Love it.
Good work.
Awesome. All right.
Cheers.
Well, thanks, guys, and see you next week. Bye.
All right. Bye.